Wait to be hearing. Good morning and welcome to Story Time. Thank you for joining me. Happy Wednesday, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome, and I hope you're ready for a beautiful story that we have today. A thought-provoking story, definitely, and a conversation that will have us thinking, have us checking ourselves and making sure too that we're looking out for those in our community, and we're looking out for each other in our communities. So thank you for joining us, and a big thank you especially to my special guest that will be here today, Alejandra Domenzain. I hope I'm getting that name correctly, but she will be here talking more about the book and of course reading to us as well. So I am excited, and the book that we're reading today is For All, Para Todos, and I know I'm butchering that, but please do forgive me. And it is a beautiful book. Please stick around afterwards for the conversation. As you may know, immigration, the talk, the discussion, immigration, immigrant rights, immigrant workers' rights. Those are things that we as a community need to be talking about, and we need to be exposing our little ones to, as they are the ones that are coming on, and we're building a nation on them. So big responsibilities, big discussion awaits us, but I am absolutely pumped for it. And I think we have just the guest for it. 25 years in this field. She knows a thing or two about it. So please join me in welcoming today Alejandra Domenzain to Storytime, and I will be bringing her on very shortly. Let us see who else is joining us really quickly, and we'll be getting started. How are you doing today? Ellen Edwards in Chicago. How are you today? Good to see you here on Storytime. And you're saying cloudy Chicago today. Well, I hope we'll bring you the sunshine today. Thank you so much for joining in, Ellen. Always a pleasure seeing you here. Amanda, how are you doing today? And of course, Sarah and Nathan. Cloudy Illinois. It seems like most of Illinois is cloudy today. Well, thank you for joining us still, for being here and spending time with us. And please do spare a thought for our friends in the Pacific Northwest, where the heat wave is going. And I know it's going up all the way into Vancouver. There's a high pressure that has been there, and it has been record high heat. And I hope that everybody is okay. So spare a thought. And if you have any resources that you know about that where people can go for cooling and things like that, please do share them, and we will absolutely try and distribute that message. So thank you so much for joining us. Good morning to you, Sarah and Nathan. And how are you doing as well? Sunshine Gonzalez. Well, I love that name. Oh my goodness. I'm changing my name from today. Rachel and Ben Beasley in Sacramento. Thank you so much for joining us. I am glad you're here. And Rachel and Ben, seems like your first time being here on Storytime. Welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much. And if you've been here before, I apologize that I forget, but your names don't sound familiar yet. Rachel and Ben, welcome from Sacramento. And of course, Sunshine. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us. Ava, Scarlett, Shay, Toby, Theo, and Kana. Oh my goodness. Ava, Scarlett, you brought the whole crew today. Thank you so much for joining in. And of course, Jade Yeomans, good morning to you as well. Oh my goodness. Loving this. Ava, Scarlett, Shay, Toby, Theo, and Kana, and I hope you're enjoying the Euro games as well. I know England is doing very well right now, so I hope you're enjoying that. Thank you so much for joining in. Amanda, how are you doing today? Baby Bia, Grandma Cindy, Grandpa Dennis, how are you today? Thank you for joining us from cloudy and warm Seattle. I am noticing, Amanda, you're saying warm. Is that better? Has it gone down from hot? So hopefully it has. Thank you for joining in. And I'm glad you're here, keeping you in our thoughts for sure at this point. We have a great discussion today. Powerful one, thought-provoking one. I hope you're ready. Please join me in welcoming the author of this book, For All, Para Todos, Alejandra Domenzain. And of course, this beautiful book she will be reading to us and talking to us about what she does. So please join me and welcome Alejandra to Storytime.
Hi, I'm so happy to be with you today.
I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here with us. And like this book, beautiful book, really powerful message. What is the inspiration for this book?
Yeah, so I've been working as an immigrant worker rights advocate for a long time, as you mentioned, and maybe I'll just say what that means in case people are not familiar with that field. So, a lot of, especially low-wage workers, which is where, there's a disproportionate amount of people of color, immigrants, and a lot of industries, also women, they face a lot of problems at work. And that can range anything from wage theft, which is what it sounds like, people not getting paid for, the work that they do, to a lot of health and safety problems. We heard in the news a lot lately about workers who weren't adequately protected against COVID-19. But the problem started way before that. There's people that are working with chemicals and they're not getting information about what those chemicals are, how to be protected. Maybe they're working outside and they're exposed to heat or to wildfire smoke. A lot of people have a really high workload and work pace, and so they develop a lot of muscle injuries from that, like hotel housekeepers or warehouse workers, janitors. And in many industries also, there's harassment and violence, whether from your own supervisor or customers. So workers face these problems. And so what do? Maybe they try to talk to their supervisor, their employer. And, there's very responsible businesses that will take care of the problem. They want to have a healthy and sustainable business. But for a lot of low-wage industries, that's not the case, unfortunately. What happens is that they have chosen this as their business model. That's how they compete to keep costs low, is to cheat workers and to put them in harm's way. And even worse, and they see them as expendable. Like, okay, well, if this one leaves, I can get another one. And so the other thing that happens a lot is there's retaliation, which basically means workers are punished for asking for a mask, right? Or for, say, asking for their rights. And that can mean, they cut their hours or give them the shift or the task that no one wants to do, or even they can lose their job. And so, it's a very big threat for a low wage worker, maybe because of their language or their skills or their documentation status. They're going to have a problem finding a better job anyway, right? So a lot of people end up kind of putting up. So that's kind of the bad news. But the good news is that there's a lot of amazing organizations out there that are doing all these exciting things to address that. So that can mean everything from doing outreach and education so workers know what their rights are and what to do when there's a problem. It can mean like organizing so that to put a little bit more pressure on employers to do the right thing, getting community involved, getting media involved, getting, policymakers, faith leaders. And it can also mean passing legislation so that workers have the protections they need, right? Getting worker stories and experiences out there to convince people, no, like we need to have this. And then of course, making sure those laws are actually enforced, because sometimes the political will isn't there, or the government agencies that are supposed to enforce it are understaffed, underfunded. So that's just to give you a big picture of like that's the kind of work that I've had the privilege to be able to do.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. And I definitely want to encourage you that are listening out there. And if you have friends, please just let them know that this discussion is on, and we will be coming back to talk about it more after reading the book. And you're doing the reading for us today. So, and we're trying out something new. I will be sharing the screen and you try and read from that. So wish us luck. I hope it works, and we'll get ready for that. So just hold on 1 second while we get situated, and then of course grab your water, grab everything that you need, get comfortable, get cozy, and then we will be starting our story very shortly. And then of course we're back for a discussion after that. All right, just 1 second while I work out this sharing. All right.
While you do that, I'll mention that I'm going to read the book in English. But it is a bilingual book, and so the Spanish is also on the bottom of each page as well.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Here we go. Some magic we're trying out here. All right. I'm just going to share this one. And then, oops. Alejandra, all right. Let's see if this works this time. All right, here we go. I think people will be seeing that. Just give me a thumbs up if you see that.
Yes.
All right. Awesome. So all yours.
Thank you so much. So this is For All, Para Todos, and by Alejandra Domenzain, me, and illustrated by KATHERINE. This is a story of a girl named Flor. Why she came to this land and what happened before. Her country was right next to this one, and yet it seemed just as far as you could possibly get. Flor learned from TV about life on that side, staring in wonder with eyes open wide. People there, it appeared, owned oh so much stuff, while for her, there was usually never enough. When she saw TV shows that had Christmas with snow, kids opening gifts in the tree's cozy glow, she dreamt of bright gifts piled high on the floor. When you thought you were done, there was always one more. As she put on her clothes and combed her black hair, she'd chat with her dad about life over there. Do you know they have so many dresses and shoes that they're late every day because it's so hard to choose? Fleur dreamt of that place where if you had sorrow, you always believed in the hope of tomorrow, where the endings were happy and teeth gleamed so white. No one was hungry and the law made things right. One day, her dad said, Fleur, we're leaving our land. The fields have all turned into dust and dry sand. We cannot grow corn with so little water. Our land cannot feed us, my dear darling daughter. Can't you find other work? Get a job in the factory? I've tried, said her dad. It was unsatisfactory. The machines and the chemicals fill me with fear. At work, Mom got sick after only a year. I couldn't save her, but can save you, my dear. You're all that I have, and I can't raise you here. Are we going to the land that we see on TV? Will we fly in a plane where there'll be toys for me? Her dad forced a smile and put on a brave face. It won't be so easy to get to that place. It's a risk, I've been told, but we just have to take it. They say over there, those who work hard can make it. They call it for all, para todos, because there, all hard workers are given a chance, fair and square. The people that built it came from all different places. It's clear when you look at their skin and their faces. The world's yummiest foods are found everywhere, and all the world's languages float in the air. If we're homesick, said Fleur, we can always come back. I'm not sure about that. Father's voice seemed to crack. They walked around knowing this would be their last time. First to the tree where Fleur learned how to climb, then to the spot where her mother was buried. Who'll pull out the weeds and bring flowers, she worried. She looked at her home with a last loving glance. Dad said, we must go while we still have the chance. No matter what happens, wherever we live, be proud of our family. We have so much to give. The journey was tiring, dangerous, and long, but Fleur and her father had hope and stayed strong. There were deserts and rivers and caves and a train. They drank water from puddles and washed in the rain. They made it, feet blistered, their clothes more like rags, and stirred up in awe when they saw the great flags. The stripes of For All waved high in the air. They seemed to announce, we all come from somewhere, but now that you're here, we're one land united. As they got to the gate, Fleur was proud and excited. The guard at the gate asked, where were you born? When Dad answered, he gave him a look of great scorn. He gave Dad 2 papers. Dad squinted his eyes. Did Dad understand them? Were they a surprise? Fleur asked, why did we get those? What do they say? Don't worry, Dad said, and he put them away. Fleur had glimpsed a red X, but did not tell her dad. Had they done something wrong? In school, X's were bad. When they finally arrived at their new destination, it was not what Fleur dreamt in her imagination. Their apartment was small, with no garden, no pool. She felt lost and alone in her strange big new school. Dad came home every night so achy and weary, played songs from his past, which made him get teary. Are you hurt? Are you sad? Dad, are you okay? Let's rest now, my love. It's been a long day. Fleur found it hard to learn the new language. Her lunch felt all wrong. Couldn't Dad make a sandwich? Fleur tried to blend in. Being lonely felt sour. She said to her class, my name's Fleur, which means flower. Kids exploded in laughter. You're named after the floor. Flora's cheeks turned bright red, and they giggled some more. Flora knew other kids came from far away too. Was it easier for them? Did they know what to do? Every day, Flora could feel her heart and head ache. Was coming to for all one big bad mistake? One day during recess, Flora sat on the grass. Miss Soto came out from her language arts class. She saw Flora was adrift and said, "You're not alone. Your story reminds me a lot of my own." Flora said, "It's so hard, they don't understand." "I do," said Miss Soto, taking Flora's hand. "I started like you. Coming here was a struggle. You'll soon feel at home." She gave Flora a snuggle. "When I was your age and was stuck, I would write, and words would reach into the dark like a light. I want you to have this green pen, for I'm sure that writing will help you stay strong and endure." Flora began writing, first choppy and slow, but soon words gushed forth, filling row after row. She wrote of her journey, the things left behind. She wrote of her dreams, all she hoped she would find. She could finally explain with the help of her pen how you ache and you grow when you're starting again. Miss Soto said, "You have a story to tell. I'm sure other students have felt this as well. Put it in the school paper for others to read. Your words will help others who are also in need." And it did. Kids came up and told Flora, "We read it. We feel the same way. We're so glad you said it." Flora ran straight back home to tell Dad all about it. Things got better. She wanted to shout it. But Dad wasn't home. Again, working late. Flora stared at the window. It was so hard to wait. As night fell, she realized, I don't know where Dad is. I wrote down my story, but I don't know his. When Dad came home tired and sat down to unwind, Flora asked all the questions she had on her mind. "Why are you so tired with no time for fun?" Dad said, "Work is hard when you're out in the sun." "Last Christmas, you said we couldn't go shopping. Why don't you have money if you work without stopping?" "Your jobs are so hard. It doesn't seem fair. The boss takes the money. Why can't he share?" Dad looked at Flora, his eyes crinkled with pain. He said, "There's something I have to explain. Remember those papers we got long ago? I tried to protect you, but it's time that you know." He took out the papers he'd gotten before, and with a low, trembling voice, he read one to Flora. "To all those that come to for all, be advised. Here are the rules, so you won't be surprised. You can pick the strawberries or pounds of tomatoes, clean up the bathrooms and fry the potatoes. You can't get more money or work without pain. You'll get into trouble if you dare to complain. If you do, guards will come. In no time at all, we can have you locked up and removed with one call. So if you speak up, they can take you away?" "Yes, Flora, I have to just do what they say. I know it's not fair, but I do it for you. If you study, there's so much more you can do." Her dad seemed to trust things for her would be better, but Flora was afraid there was more to the letter. She saw one more page, which her dad didn't mention. Was that page about her? Flora swallowed the question. Flora put her green pen away far out of sight. It wasn't enough to tell stories and write. Dad couldn't speak up. It wasn't allowed. It was safer for her to blend in with the crowd. Flora needed to use all her determination to get into school for a good education. For her next school, a test would decide. If Flora knew all the answers, they'd let her inside. Every day, Flora would study, learning slowly but steady. And when the test came, she was totally ready. She'd done it. Her dad had been right to believe. For all really gave her the chance to achieve. The school would accept her with one big hooray. Flora planned her first day and what she would say. I'll go to the school to invent a new pill to help mothers like mine if they ever get ill, and to have a fair job, not like those of my dad. Then I'll buy him the things that he never had. When she got to the school, she saw a big sign. If your papers have check marks, go stand in that line. If they have a red X, that means you should go. We cannot accept you. The answer is no. The guard said, I know your test score was great, but the orders I have say don't open the gate. If you were born here, then you belong. If you are not, you'll always be wrong. Our grandparents weren't born here. Yes, that is true. But we must draw the line. And we draw it at you. Flora ran to her father and asked, did you know? Did that paper list places where I cannot go? Yes, Flora, it said, to all those that come. No justice for all means justice for some. For me, it means jobs with hard work and low pay. For you, I guess schools will now send you away. I had hoped that with time we would both be accepted. You'd be let in and I'd be respected. Flor said, oh, Dad, I have so much to learn. You believed in Para Todos. Now it's my turn. I have to help those in the same situation. Immigrants long to belong to this nation. I think that the problem is people don't know. The workers are tired. Youth have nowhere to go. If they heard all our stories, I think they'd agree to be fair to immigrants like you and like me. Dad said, I'm scared. Speaking out can be tough. But you're right. Working hard just isn't enough. We need to convince them to make a new rule, to work without fear and be let into school. Flor remembered Miss Soto and all her advice. She grabbed her green pen without thinking twice. She'd write down the stories of people she'd met who hadn't been able to speak up just yet. She started with dads and wrote it all down. Then she interviewed immigrants all over town. I'll go on TV to get out the word. Tell voters the truth that they haven't heard. The man at the station asked, why are you here? People like you never dare to come near. There's so many stories that I have to offer about the unfairness that immigrants suffer. Your viewers need to know the truth when they vote. They might change their minds when they hear what I wrote. If they know what it's like, I trust that they'll care. Vote for schools for all kids and jobs that are fair. Long ago, Flor had seen For All on TV. Now she knew that For All wasn't all it should be. But this was her home now. She felt loyal and proud. So she had to speak up, say her truth right out loud. Flor went on TV and got people's attention. She got them to listen and also to question. Immigrants should not be abused and left out. Justice must be what this country's about. When Flor finished talking, people called on the phone saying, we feel the same. You aren't alone. We also believe we can make this place better. United, we'll change unfair laws all together. Flor couldn't believe it. There were so many others who stood up for each other like sisters and brothers. They told her, we know we are all one community. We are strong only if we believe in our unity. So Flor joined the group to give a big speech, and together, their voices had a much wider reach. You inspired us all to vote for new rules. We'll win justice for all in our jobs and our schools. What do you think is right in this situation? Should immigrants have a fair chance in this nation? Should all kids have schools where they study for free and workers get paid so that they live comfortably? One day, you will vote and make that big choice. So be ready to answer and lift up your voice. But for now, Flor's going around giving out pens. Even Dad started talking about rights with his friends. Your moment will come, though you may not know when. So why not start writing? Pick up your green pen.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Beautiful reading and just powerful message in there. Oh, thank you so much, Alejandra. And just, just as you're reading, there's so many topics, so many angles, issues that come up with that. Perhaps one of the questions I would ask is, and I know you've talked about this too at the beginning, but why Para Todos? Why For All? Why this book?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned before my work as an immigrant workers advocate, and I think you see you see that in there, right? The really impossible situation that this whole class of workers is in, where not only do they risk losing their job if they speak up, they risk losing everything, being torn away from their family for the life that they've built, sometimes for 20, 30 years, to go to a country they may not even know anymore. They may not speak the language. There's no safety for them. There's no job. So it's big risk. And so that's something that I wanted to lift up. We don't see that very much in children's books. And it's like the reality that I see every day, but not just the problems, but just how exciting it is, like what is being done about it, what can be done about it. So that's like one part. And then the other part is I was also a teacher. And so elementary school. And so, of course, I have a passion for children's books. I mean, I was a reader always growing up. And then just as an educator, like having a good book can be such an amazing tool, right? It can be such an on-ramp for just so many discussions and projects and questioning. So I think those two things came together for me. You know, when I wrote it, I had no idea how the book industry worked, how to get published, nothing. I knew no one that did it. And I thought, you know, if nothing else, this will be for my kids. I had young kids. I wrote it right after Trump was elected, and I was in a state of despair about like, oh my gosh, what more can we do? How do I process this with my kids? And so, you know, 4 years later, that's how long it took for me to figure out this process to get out in the world. And so now I just really, really hope that it can be a tool for other families and educators and librarians and advocates, you know, to use it for that purpose, to have those conversations, because they're hearing, you know, kids are affected in their classrooms and their families,
absolutely,
you know, and also they're seeing it in the news. So it's an issue that like it actually ended up being really timely because the two issues that are in the book, which is protections for farm workers and for dreamers, are actually, you know, being addressed right now at the national level. So so I hope it can be a tool for that.
But Alejandra, what are you talking about? We know that Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta already won this battle for us. Like, so what work are you talking about?
Yeah, well, great question. You know, we have a lot of great books about historical civil rights struggles and historical labor rights struggles. Not enough, but we have. But I think the danger, you know, like when I was teaching those books as a teacher, I knew like my colleagues were out in the street doing incredible, amazing things like today. And yet that wasn't so much reflected in the classroom. It was so hard for me to bring that to my students. And so I think there's a big need to talk about what's going on with workers today, right? And again, not just the problems, but just the really, really exciting advocacy and organizing and kind of narrative shift and culture work that's being done to get really justice for all in the workplace. So I think it's really important. I think that the risk is if like we leave kids with only the historical stuff, then they kind of get the idea, like you said, like, oh, wait, didn't Cesar Chavez take care of it? Check, like, we're good, we're all done. And so, no, like, I want kids to know there's so much work to be done right now, and it's being done. And actually, some of the most vibrant social movements we have today are led by young people, you know, immigration reform being led by dreamers. We just passed the 9th anniversary of DACA. Like, it was young people who made that happen, right? The gun rights movement is led by young people. The climate change movement is led by young people. So I want kids to know that we need that, and we need whatever they have to offer. You know, some people think like activism is like, I don't know, angry people shouting in the street or something. And you know, that's a strategy sometimes. So much more than that. Like whatever you like. If you like coding, if you like cooking, if you like ever talent and skill you have, you can put it in the service of something that you care about. And I don't think we ask kids enough that. You know, we ask them, what are you going to be when you grow up? But we kind of assume, like, how are you going to make money, you know, and fit into the structure. We don't ask them, like, what do you care about? Like, what's your heart? What inspires you? What moves you? And give them the tools to get involved in that as a career sometimes, not as a career, but there's just always ways that kids can make that part of like a really meaningful, full life. It's such a privilege to have a life where you can do that, where like one of your deepest passions connects with one of the world's like biggest needs. And when you find that, I mean, for me, it's been so transformative, and I want kids I want us to give kids that option.
Right. No, and you know, like one of the great things that you do with this book is you bring that human element. You humanize the immigrants, because a lot of times, you know, when you talk of immigrants, always there's this othering that happens, and almost justifies whatever, you know, pain, anger that may be coming to that group. And so it's like, but you talk about these stories, you talk about the dreams, you know, like, say, for example, even just the acclaim that the book gets from Carlos Gutierrez, the former U.S. Secretary of Commerce. Like, he mentions that dreams, aspirations of dreamers, also their struggles and heartbreaks. And so, you know, what drove you to really dive deep and bring that element out? Because I feel like for me reading this, and you know, like you see it in a different light. You see the humans behind it. You see the dreams that are there from people. And even just in the story from Flo, we see that dream, the hopes that her dad has.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I guess I did something right if that's the effect it had on. That was the goal, right? I mean, I could sit and churn out like angry political all day long. And I really think that the way we work as human beings is, yes, you need the research and the numbers and the, you know, the objective facts. Of course, we need to start there, but I don't think it's enough. I think what moves us as human beings is what you're saying, the human element, the human connection. And the moment you start othering someone for any reason, that's it. That's when you start really seeing workers disposable, you know, or other people as the violence that's inflicted on them or something like that. So absolutely, I think I wanted that human connection. I wanted, and I wanted it from the kid's perspective, you know. So like, what does it mean? Your parent is a low-wage worker and they're just never home. And no matter how much they work, there's not enough money. Like what does that mean to a child, right? And I wanted to show her process of coming to understand that.
Yeah, no, and I, you know, like as you're mentioning, I'm thinking too, as educators, as, you know, people in authority and all in different roles, sometimes the thing that comes to mind is just like, if a parent never shows up to parent conferences or they never do certain things, you're just like, oh, this parent doesn't care. You know, like the default is, oh, this parent doesn't care. They're not involved in the child's education. But then you're saying, you know, somebody's there working out long hours in the sun. We saw that those pictures that were coming through, the images of people working, and the smoke from the burning fires was out, and you're seeing people still out without any proper protection. And so just thinking about that, like how, you know, like with that in mind too, just thinking about what changes we can make in our own professions, right? But also thinking too is like, what keeps you going? You know, you say, for example, you know, like the last 4 years that we had under the last regime was just constant barrage of, you know, like just hope diminishing and just this hate being, you know, sent out. And they're just thinking about that, like, what kept you going? What keeps you going in moments like that?
I think, you know, the beautiful thing about having the, you know, kind of an activist career is you see the changes. First of all, you meet the people that, like, against all odds are doing, I mean, they are passing. California, we have some of the best labor laws in the country, and it's because of domestic workers, day laborers, janitors, hotel housekeepers, farm workers, people in food processing, right? Like doing the hard work of organizing. And, you know, the other side is really strong and well-funded. And the business community always will, oh, it's going to, you know, affect jobs. But they never question, like, well, if your job, someone's like working full time and they're getting sick, they're getting injured, and they're living in poverty, well, do we even want those jobs? So anyway, you're just making, I've met the people that are in, you know, they're facing it, and just such leadership, like such courage, right? Putting everything on the line. I work in these organizations where we're able to provide the support, you know, for them to be the protagonist of these movements. I've seen laws change. So I think that is an inspiration for me. I think if I only saw the news, I would feel really hopeless. But because I see how much work is happening that is getting us to bit by bit, and sometimes leaps and bounds to more justice, that keeps me going. That being part of that movement and those teams and those conversations.
Yeah, no, that's powerful. And then too, like, I know that, you know, this book has a style that is very, very minimal. The illustrations are, you know, like the color is just the way it's done. It just really transmits that message. So thinking about it is like, how was it working with Katherine Lowe? And, you know, like, yeah, how did you meet?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a random story. As I mentioned, I just started writing. I had no idea. I this is how clueless I was. I thought I had to get my own illustrator. Like I had to like the book and figure out the drawings and then like go present my package to someone. I didn't know who yet, but I just seemed like that needed to happen. So I work at UC Berkeley in the public health building, and there's a beautiful mural on the stairwell that every time I go back, I just like, it just takes my breath away. It's this gorgeous. It's an image of this kind of brown baby, and then all these different colored hands kind of holding him up. And it just has such tenderness and beauty to it. And on the bottom, the artist signed it and put her email. And I thought, well, she's an artist. She may be able to point me to the place where you get in touch with other artists. So,
Right.
and that's Katherine LOH. And so, as it turned out, she was really interested in the project. And, I can tell you kind of, we went from there. But I think that's what I loved about, her style of illustrations. I think sometimes, this book is, it's for younger readers, let's say maybe kindergarten, first, second grade, they're going to understand the story literally. But I think, it's really meant more for kind of like the upper elementary and middle grades. I think that's where you really get into the connections of like history and civics and, a lot of other topics. So for those kids, I think, I'm kind of trusting in the power of the story. And also I think kind of the rhyme, because it's kind of dense. It's not a light and fluffy story. So the rhyme kind of helps keep it sing-songy and keep you going and not like give up. But they didn't need like huge splashy illustrations on every page. It was kind of, so what we wanted was more kind of accents, almost like accents. And that was intentional, not to put full color. And actually someone told me, and I hadn't thought about this, how the fact that Flor doesn't have a skin color makes it so that you can kind of project your own, and then anyways, people from Latin America have a really rich heritage from, and one of my best friends is Afro-Mexican and, descended from like escaped slaves in Mexico, to indigenous ancestry, obviously European. So, so I think that's one thing I love about the illustrations. They're very delicate. I think they portray this respect for the characters. They're not cartoony. They portray this kind of respect and attention, and I really love.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And one of the things too, like you had it presented bilingual. Why was that important to you?
It's a great question, and I can tell you why it brings access to other people. And of course, it's a story, but that's, it's my story. I learned English when I was in the middle of first grade, so I can relate to that. But I think it would be fascinating to turn that question around, and we should be asking writers who write in English only, why did you choose to limit your book? I mean, do you know, I actually recently learned this, the United States does not have an official language. Some states do. Some states have passed that legislation, and actually some states have other than English in addition as one of their official languages. So we are a multilingual country, right? So I think I'm a big fan of multilingualism, and why not have it in our children's books?
Yeah, no, that's one of again, just going back to one, I think Juan Felipe Herrera says, the poet laureate of the USA at the time, was saying Alejandra gives us a gift of courage and endurance. A magnificent book and model for all ages, schools, and communities. So how can we get this book into the communities, into the schools, into those spaces, because I'm looking at it, I know, like you mentioned too, it's a powerful tool. So how can we get in those spaces? How can we get it, are you getting any help in distributing this book?
Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I'm still struggling with that because, for those of you, again, that know the publishing industry, what I'm coming to learn is, like with other industries, there's kind of the big publishers and they have a really great network of distribution and ties to the schools and the libraries. And then there's like all the small independent do not have that. And so it's actually really hard. And it's, there's a bigger issue that leads to, it's starting to change, but not fast enough. There was more in the most recent study about analysis of diversity in children's books. There was more books published about objects like, trucks and, I don't know, dinosaurs and stuff or other living things. More books about non-humans than there are about all books with all diverse characters combined, all the racial diversity, right? So, and then, you know, within that, we could even talk about like, well, how many of those books are about rights and laws and structural analysis and the stuff we can change, and social change is probably, you know, it's a lot less. So anyway, so that we still have a mainstream, I guess is my point. We have mainstream publishers, we have mainstream distribution. And so it's actually really hard, you know, even like book blogs and things like that, they often won't review. They won't review books that come from independent publishers. So I mean, the way that I'm doing it is I just, you know, I have like networks of collaborations with organizations that are immigration reform organizations or labor rights, you know, educators or progressive social change, and just trying to, like, the old fashioned way, you know, build community and build collaboration and kind of, my goal isn't just to like get the book out there. My goal is to get it in the hands of people who can like really use it as a tool. So I'm donating all the royalties to, you know, for the life of the book to help like fundraise for immigrant and labor rights organizations, right? It's not about selling books for me, but it is about like, where are those spaces where people, and there are, you know, where people are really hungry for tools like this to use and for stories like this. So I actually, that is a question for your listeners. If other people have ideas for, you know, for how to do that, I would love to hear it.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah. And just a reminder too, for you that are joining in, today we have Alejandra Domenzain, who's the author of this wonderful book with a powerful message, Para Todos, for all. Yes, that's a good one. And we're just following up the discussion on that. And just thinking too is, you know, this book, you mentioned, you know, people showing carriage. We see Flo showing carriage. How can people, you know, like, we have immigrants in all different aspects, you know, we have undocumented, we have so much, like, how can people still have their voices heard if they are afraid of those, you know, pressures that you talked about, that oppression that is there, the scare tactics that are happening? So what can people do? How can they still get their voice out there and still, you know, maybe maintain their privacy or maintain, you know, like a sort of distance to protect themselves?
Yeah, well, in the case of, you know, worker movements, it's often in numbers, or safety in numbers, you know, and so there's worker centers, there's unions, there's community organizations that can help do that and can help, you know, maybe they are going to be retaliated against, you know, maybe they are going to send immigration authorities to deport them. And so they're prepared, they have the legal resources, they have the strategy to protect them. And then for others, you know, maybe for some of your viewers that are wondering like, well, how can I get involved? There's always something going on, you know, like find out in your local area, there are workers trying to make things more dignified and more fair. And so find those organizations and support them. You know, when there's legislation that's being considered, contact your representatives. It makes a big difference. For those places where you're the customer, the consumer, you know, ask questions. If you can support a business that's treating its workers well, as opposed to not, or if you don't know, just ask, you know, in your favorite restaurant, what conditions are workers in, et cetera. So, you know, you can, there's a lot that you can do to also lend your support, you know, to those that are really putting themselves on the line, and it requires so much courage and so much hard work. So anything that we can do as allies to support that is really, really important.
No, that's, you know, like, that's so powerful. Great reminders for each one of us out there too. And then where do you find the courage to speak up? How did you end up in, you know, like in activism like that?
Oh gosh. Well, okay. So I guess I should start, you know, my parents grew up in Mexico. They grew up in, you know, very limited resources. My dad was the oldest of 9 siblings. He had to take his little brothers and sisters on a bus, you know, across Mexico City to go to school every day. My mom also, you know, is very, very poor. They're always kind of hustling, trying to make ends meet. Actually, one interesting connection is one of the things that her mom did to kind of, you know, get money here or there is she would take her daughters on a bus from Mexico City across the border. Back in those days, it was kind of easier to, you know, go back and forth and buy, like, I don't know, there was some cheap source of clothing where they went, some flea market, and then sell the American clothes Mexico out of her living room. You know, her father was eventually, the thing that kind of gave him a little bit more stability is they built this makeshift like machine in their patio that would help recycle this type of plastic. And so all the kids would like sit in the living room and like, you know, sort the plastic, and the machine cut off 2 of his fingers. So anyway, so that they were the ones who kind of were facing the survival. They were in survival mode. And so they studied really hard. They're kind of like one of those success stories. My mom was the first in her class every single year in school, every single year. They went to university. They were like the first in their families to go to a university in Mexico City. It's free. Well, the government covers the cost, but then you do community service for a year to kind of pay your debt to society. So they got a good education, and by the time they came here with a work visa. So me and my sister had the privilege, right, of now being here and being able to get a good education. And so our burning question wasn't so much survival. It was like, how do I contribute? Right? Like, what is meaningful for me? And so we actually both ended up being, advocates, and so that's where I get. I feel like it's my obligation, right? Like I didn't have to worry about like, oh, we're gonna have meat, am I gonna have a clothing? My mom was always embarrassed to go to parties. She had the one dress that had to last her like 2 years, and everyone had seen it already. It was faded. Right. Like I didn't have to worry about that. And so I feel like with that privilege comes with like, so what do I do? What do I do with this education, with this energy, with this safety? And so that's how I've chosen to, to engage and give back.
Well, like you've done an amazing job with this. I did not know about your work before we met, before we talked. And honestly, like just looking at this and reading your story, to put in that much time that you've put into this, it takes a chip of your own life, a slice of your own life to put yourself out there and, like fight for a cause that, like you're saying, at times may not seem to directly affect you, but it affects the community. It affects everybody else. So in a way, it still comes back to affecting us. And I really appreciate that. And, like there's this thing too of thinking like, America was built on this dream. There's this immigration dream of, like freedom and justice for all. And you do a great job in bringing that in this story. And there are many, many people that we talk to, yourself, like a child of immigrants, an immigrant yourself. And so is that dream still alive?
I think it's very much alive. I think we have to work for it, though. I think we have to, the ideals of this country are beautiful and transcendent and unique, and they are ideals. I don't think as a country we've ever really fully lived up to them. And, that's why it's really important to, there's debate about critical race studies. Like, let's be honest. Let's be honest. I mean, it doesn't take anything away from your patriotism to actually, to me, it's the opposite. If you notice the Flor in the story, the reason she speaks up and is because she feels so loyal to her new home, and she wants it. She believes in it, right? She wants to live up to its ideals. And I think, honestly, people in social movements, they're doing that. I think they're the ones that are, helping us say, hey, like, yeah, let's do this that we say we believe in. So I think the dream is very much alive, but it's not something that's going to happen by itself. It's going to happen from all of us, like building it, step by step, and uniting to get it built.
That's awesome. Yeah. And too, like in schools, in places, we have places that are, putting up measures like where it's, maybe, this is a sanctuary school and so on. So what more can we do in those communities as we are observing? Because sometimes, and one of the things, like, it encourages tell your story. And I think one of the your reviewers too in here mentioned like, it encourages people to share their stories and tell them. But then if we have these students that where maybe they've been told at home, you cannot share your full story. How do we create spaces where people are given the opportunity to share their stories as they are allowed, or as they are, like in that time confined? I don't know if it makes sense, but like creating spaces where people can share these stories and still be safe. How do we do that? I know you mentioned like you do the writing, the green pen in here. It's such a great way to think about how we can, like we have this, we can log things and just write, and then this gives us some solace. So what do you think, like, what are some things that we could do as community members, as schools, to really help our neighbors feel safe?
Yeah, I think it's, it's what you're saying, is creating those safe spaces. Most of us have that story of that one teacher or, family member who who really saw us, who believed in us before we really did. We can be those people, right? For our children, for our students, for our community members. As we mentioned before, I believe in the power of the arts. I think writing, but not just writing, but whatever it is, how people express kind of their innermost selves. I think it's hard to like discriminate and hate when you connect at such a visceral level, The shortest distance between two people isn't reason and intellect or ideology. It's like laughter and imagination and stories and play, right? And so I think the more we're able to create that, it's just instead of like telling someone to believe or be accepting or like you don't need to tell them, they felt it in their heart, right? Like I think that's what art is. I think art creates an experience. You don't tell people what to think or feel. You just create. You invite them into the space, and they come out different. It's their own. They own it. If you do it well, they just can't unsee that thing, or they can't unfeel this connection that they felt. And so, I'm a big believer in that. I'm trying to figure out how to do more of that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And this book. First, I'll put it to you. What were some of your goals in putting this book out? What were some of your goals, some of your hopes? And then I just want to talk about that as well.
Sure. Well, I hoped to capture, just the predicament that undocumented workers are in and undocumented youth, but also the vibrancy of their activism, because again, that's something that I feel like is such a defining part of our times. And so I wanted to celebrate that. And then also I wanted it to be a tool to have those conversations. And, I think the other thing that maybe we don't do enough in children's books is a lot of the social stuff, the solutions that are offered are very interpersonal, like be kind, very important message, very necessary. And to change those, the structural conditions, we also have to look at the structural problems. And so it is about rights. It is about policy. It is about social justice. And so I also wanted to, I wanted to really invite the reader, adults and children, like I pose the questions, like I'm not going to let them finish the book without at least considering what do you think is fair? What do you think is fair?
How would you questions that you put in there too.
Yes, there's discussion questions, and like, what are you? What do you want to do with your green pen? Like, you have a voice, you have a vote. So I really want people to think about that. Maybe it's not about immigration or labor reform. Maybe it's some other issue that's like very burning and dear to you. But I hope that happens. And then as I mentioned before, I hope that with the discussion questions and on my website, I'm trying to put as many resources as I can for educators as well. That it can be a resource, because again, there's just this gap. There's just not much on current labor rights. There's not much on immigration activism and rights. The experience, there's more and more, which is great to see, but not so much like the actual undocumented person as an agent of change, which they are. That is the reality. That is what's happening. So that is, it's just this gap so far, hopefully 5 years from now, people say, oh yeah, that old book, that was before we had all those other cool wave of, books that came in to fill that gap, but not yet. So I'm trying to start that conversation. So, back to your question too, I think that's the other thing I'm trying to do besides get the word out about the book is, I'm writing articles and different guest blogs, whoever will have me about this conversation. It matters. It matters that kids see these issues represented, but it matters that they see that there's something to be done.
Yeah. I'll just let that sit with all of us who are here and just those that will be watching later on as well. It is, like, I think like Ola Olu mentions there, like that your love and passion and just energy for this comes out. We can tell, you can feel it. And just, thank you for your endurance with this race, like you've really stuck at it and it's not done. And, like you're doing a good job too of passing on the baton, which is happening now, like some of us that may have been thinking differently before reading this book today or before talking to you today. Hopefully we've been moved to think more about these topics, to think more how we can reach out to certain organizations. If we're financially able to support, why not do that? If we're able to donate our time, our art, everything that you mentioned, we can do that. And so the hope, the message of hope that you spread is just, it's invaluable, you know, like, so, and I really want to appreciate that, because I think many times a lot of us hear bits and pieces of things, but never really take the time or are given the opportunity to dig into those things. And then what you mentioned with children's books, I think being such an important part of educating our young ones, and which is also what Amanda was talking about then, like young people are doing amazing things and they are important, but how can we make sure too that they're equipped with that information as we move forward? So I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for educating me. And I'm sure you're educating somebody out there too, and especially for educating our little ones as well as they're growing up, and creating a platform for parents to have a conversation with their children. Like, this is powerful. And listening to what your goals were, I think this book is on its way to that. And I hope that, you know, like this nation can keep living up to that dream and keep that hope alive. Work like yours is important. Voices like yours are important. Voices like the people that you mentioned in this book are important. And I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. And I love the work that you do. I think we're in the same vein, right? Like, we believe in kids, we believe in young people, we believe in the power of books and reading, we believe in the power of adults that are there engaging with them. There's a very big difference between dumbing things down and breaking things down. And I think good books do that. You know, kids, you know, I don't know how many of you remember when you were young, but, you know, I remember being really aware of what was going on and really grappling with a lot of big things. And so I think we shouldn't underestimate our kids. Let's give children the books that they deserve, and let's be there with them, you know,
and give them the credit they deserve, for sure. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. And you had some organizations that you wanted to mention that people can jump to or help, or I don't know if you're putting those in the chat or if it's just something you're going to talk about, but I think it's
sure. Yeah, I mean, I would really encourage you find out locally, like what's going on locally. There are some like national organizations that are doing great work. Right. National Employment Law Project is one, working on labor law for health and safety issues. There's a National Council of Occupational Safety and Health, which is kind of network of vetworks with, you know, doing amazing work. And then, you know, by industry, there's a lot, like the day laborers have a national organization, domestic workers have a national organization. So, and I'm going to try to add, that's one of the resources I want to put on my website, is I actually have a list of books that deal with current labor and immigrant rights that I've compiled. And I'm going to put also a list of worker rights books and organizations as well there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alejandra. It has been a pleasure and such an honor to have you here with this important topic. And I think it really gives us a space to really be diving into these issues. And for everybody that joined in today, you know, I just want to say thank you to you. And please let us keep being inquisitive. Let us keep questioning the status quo. What can we do better? And I think this book does an amazing job of bringing that. And Alejandra, we wish you the very best in your work as you continue making this world a better place. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do too.
All right. Oh, thank you. That was my guest for today, Alejandra Domenzain. Do you want to say your name for us? I really know.
Alejandra Domenzain, or any approximation.
Thank you so much, Alejandra. I'll catch you in the back in a minute. Oh, thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. This has been story time for today. And yes, questioning, always let us be ones that talk and address these issues that are happening in our communities. Important information. And thank you, Amanda. I appreciate you, like you're saying. Thank you so much, Alejandra. Thank you for your book and these resources. The passion is inspiring. Absolutely. Appreciate you, Amanda. I know, you know, like just your energy, the sort of person you are. We appreciate you for that. And Baby Bia, thank you as well. Grandpa, Dennis, Grandma, Cindy, Ellen Edwards in Chicago, Harmony, Beth, everybody that was joining in today. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Please spread the message. Spread this message. Share it with people out there and let them know that there's an amazing book, an amazing tool that parents, community leaders can use in sharing and talking about these important issues in our communities. And I really appreciate Alejandra and this opportunity to dive into such a topic today on Storytime. But I pray too that this is not the end of this conversation, that this conversation carries on in our living rooms, in our, in our libraries, in our barbershops, in our restaurants, everywhere. It must carry on until we see justice. So thank you so much for joining me on Storytime. I know you're all